And you're very welcome to the Town End Podcast. It's season 3, episode 25, and I am happy because Super Dundalk have absolutely surpassed anything I could think of for tonight. I'm blown away. Shamrock Rovers side there tonight. Probably our most complete performance. To go through this performance with me tonight, I'm joined by Kieran Callan. Kieran, how are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic, and thanks for having me.
Good. Kieran, it's always good to come in on the back of a result like that. Quickly, before we'll pick through the game in a second, but just your thoughts on that performance tonight.
I'm just absolutely, first of all, I just want to say I want to congratulate the players, Stephen, everybody involved, because that's the kind of performance that I think Dundalk fans have been looking for quite a while. And the reason why I say this is that people will never, ever question players' loyalties, players commitment to things, but it was just an absolute massive effort that has sometimes been required. And I think during the course of Stephen O'Donnell's reign, sometimes the team has been reactive instead of proactive. And I think tonight we had to be kind of from the off, we had to be at it. And I think tonight we saw a very high press. We saw a side that didn't give Shamrock Rovers time on the ball. They didn't give them time to make any sort of tactical runs or any kind of phases of play that they would have been accustomed to building up. They weren't given an inch. They weren't given a second on the ball. And you could see that they were buoyed on by the crowd. It was a different type of atmosphere this evening. We understand that there was a significant standoff in the shed tonight. I don't really want to get into that aspect of it tonight, but I think all in all, Dundalk had a game plan set out this evening. It was brought in on a methodology that was to really suffocate Shamrock Rovers and just stop them from playing, but allowed us to play at the same time. I'm not going to say that it was flawless, but it absolutely worked to perfection. And with that, we got a just reward. It was fully deserved. And I have to say that going into the game, the first thing I saw, Andy Boyle missing from the team sheet, I went, oh God, here we go. It was the first thing that kind of came into my head. Hayden Muller had an excellent performance. Louis Hennessy, I think in reality, the first time that I saw Louis really perform was actually in the Aviva Stadium. You could see the potential there. He's just really carried that into the Dundalk performances in these last couple of games. Hayden Muller was excellent. Conor Malley, I know he's had his criticism. I know there was one of the games a couple of weeks ago, Stephen O'Donnell had to turn around and speak to a fan that sat behind the dugout. Because of the criticism that was coming from fans in relation to Hayden Muller's performances. He really showed them up this evening. And look, Pat Hoban does what Pat Hoban does. And, we just got a performance tonight that I think I'm saying that we're coming into, I know there's about, I think 11 or 12 games left in this season. We're now a point off third. If this isn't a springboard, I don't know what is.
Yeah, look, and like you say, you kind of touched on a few points there, and you were talking about, Andy Boyle being missing. Like I think even just the team sheet in general threw up a few questions, Kieran. Not only what formation we were going to play, but who the personnel he had brought in. So like back in comes Lee, Kelly, Muller, and Yuli Coco, and Alfie Lewis back on the bench after quite some time out as well. Straight away, like up in the gantry, we were all like, right, is he going to back 4 here and push Davis up, or is it a back 5? And we kind of came to the conclusion it must be a back 5, but like it was brave, I think, from Skip, because if it didn't work, people would have criticized that straight away. But it clearly was something maybe they'd worked on all week in getting those 2 wingers. Like we had a quick little chat off air there, Kieran, and like we did mention, and you brought it up, that this Rovers squad it is an aging side. So actually, if you can get 2 wingers to work for you, this was the game. It's easier said than done sometimes, but I think Skip, really he done his homework tonight, and you could see that in that level of performance.
Absolutely. You only have to look at the age profile. Richie Towell was there with us in 2015. I know he wasn't on the pitch this evening. We're Ronan Finn. Sean Hoare was signed for us in 2017. You know, Daniel Cleary around the same time. We're now at 2023. Like, it's been 5 years, like, from when these lads were coming into the Dundalk squad. Never mind moving to the Shamrock Rovers squad. Like, I think James Rogers put it up like the combined appearances was over 600 between the Dundalk Shamrock Rovers players, so to speak. The players that used to play for Dundalk are now with Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah.
Like, it's an incredible the amount of amassed games these players had. And yeah, but like, we know it ourselves. Like, there's players on our squad, Patrick Hope and Robbie Benson, for example. These players are of the same kind of ilk. But we're now combining with young, dynamic players. Like, Archie Davies is now showing the reason why he's come to this football club. You can see what he brings to the table, and tonight was definitely a great showing from him.
There's a flood of man of the match nominations already for Davies.
Yeah,
like, I'm not surprised.
So, like, I know Louis Hennessy got it but I thought Archie Davies was outstanding this evening, and I was just about to say, I know he's come in for an awful lot of criticism at different times, but I think Robbie McCourt is starting to show why Stephen O'Donnell showed faith in him and bringing him in. You know, like it's just been, tonight is one of those games where they were asked to be standing up and be counted. And a similar thing has happened up in Dingham Park this evening, where Sligo Rovers, John Russell asked for, there's been a lot of pressure put on him. And a big result was asked out of Sligo Rovers, and they got it. But that result has now put us in like 1 point off the contention for a European place, for an automatic European place. Like, I mean, we're in a very, very good position compared to where we are. But look, the other thing about it is we're unbeaten in 5. It's 4 wins and a draw, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And like, that's and John Flank, I just see the comment there. They really did just outwork them, and that came from a very high pressing game, and really they just got in their faces. And I think Shamrock Rovers went into this game, I think they were expecting maybe a Dundalk side that were going to sit in and be compact, and they were going to get a lot of the ball. They didn't get that, and I think that their game plan was thrown out the window because they were not expecting. But you could see the frustrations, particularly in certain players. Richie Towell looks frustrated. Johnny Kenny didn't look like he had a good game tonight. They were missing Jack Byrne as well. He went off against Derry City and didn't feature this evening. Like, Dundalk just outperformed them tonight. They just outperformed them, and with that, they got their just rewards. And the other thing is that you have to look at the period in which Rory Gaffney had an opportunity to put Shamrock Rovers ahead. And 3 to 4 minutes later, Dundalk make that break. I mean, that's the fine margins in these games. And I did say in my match report before I had to rewrite it because the 2 goals went in, was all this game was missing was a goal, and then we got 2.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just really go through some of the comments here tonight, Ken in there with, from start to finish, we were on top of them, pressing everything. Rovers and Warriors, best performance from Kelly. Patsy Matthews, brilliant performance. The result, tactics were spot on. Like, it's just positive here from everyone. Mark Carlin, the same, great team performance. Like, there's, everyone's really calling out. Although we are looking for man of the match competition later on, but like, everyone's literally saying team here. Look, what a performance from the lads. Same again. Like, I think that seems to be a thing tonight, and that just probably credit to everyone who was on the pitch there tonight. What a performance again from top to bottom. I think this is, like I said, it's probably the most complete performance from a Dundalk team in quite some time. And it's great to see that, we do have that in us, because I think at times, Kieran, we probably wondered, is there always an error in us? And I actually thought, you mentioned Robbie McCourt earlier on. It's probably just a very unlucky player. We said that every time he's come back, he's either got injury or, just a silly mistake, and it's cost him every time. He's been very unlucky like that. But like I say, a good solid performance from him tonight, and that's good to see. I think this is coming down to maybe 2 players here tonight for man of the match. Davis into an early lead, but yeah, look, Louis Ansley is there as well. So it's going to look like it's going to be close between the two of them. So just keep your suggestions coming. Myself and Kieran will pick our man of the match later on. Kieran, we'll go through the game. First half, there's not going to be a whole lot for us to talk about here. Probably the big moment was Sean Hoare, a little mix-up with Paul's goal there. That would have been a real icing on the cake for a performance tonight had that gone in. But somehow Sean managed to get himself back on the line to clear the ball off. But he was lucky for a second.
I think the whole of County Louth was trying to suck that ball into the back of the net. You know, it just seemed to roll, and it just looked like, but Sean got that back. But like, that's what happens when you put players under pressure. Sean actually didn't have anybody around him at the time, but because he was so used to being pressed by Dundalk so high, particularly from Patrick Hoban, he was getting an awful lot of hassle from him, that he felt he had to make that decision. Plus, there was no communication between himself and Post. Post came out to get the ball, and Sean Hoare also went for it. Like, that's something which Stephen Bradley would have been very, very disappointed with. If that had gone in, that would have been, while Dundalk fans would have taken it, you know, with full strength, you know, with all, but like, that's a kind of comical thing from a player of his experience, that he should have listened to either from the call. But then, you know, would that have call have been made if Manus was in goal? I think Manus would have been much stronger. He would have been much louder, and then he would have made the call. You know, obviously he would have heard it. But then a couple of minutes later, you know, Shamrock Rovers got for the first time, they got in behind the Dundalk defence. However, it was offside, and Sean Gannon thought he was here to break hearts.
He was making his way towards the shed to celebrate too.
Yeah, well, that was actually a very funny one, because on our side we knew that it had hit the side netting from Patrick Hoban from the corner. However, the shed didn't, and they thought they started cheering. So it's that constitutes the fine margins that this game was always going to be decided on. And I'm kind of happy in a way that it wasn't decided by like a comical, stupid own goal and stuff. Like, sorry, Sean, he's going to give me when I say that, but you know, but like, in fairness, like, it would have been kind of, it would have been good, but you know, you wanted to win it by, you know, outperforming them at certain stages and phases of play, and that's exactly what Dundalk did this evening. Sean Gannon's goal was offside, and in reality, between it and the Rory Gaffney and Graham Burke's effort in second half, Nathan did have to command his area very well, but he wasn't called, particularly in the first half. Neither goalkeeper were called into a major action. But that was because this was a real war of attrition in the middle of the park. It seemed that no team could get a settlement on the ball. I would love to have seen the stats in terms of possession and turnovers, because it would have been just crazy numbers. But I think all in all, I think Dundalk would have gone into the first half much happier. It took them a little while. I think Shamrock Rovers came out and they were a little bit more settled. But then when Dundalk got into their groove again, it was just, I said that this was going to be settled by 1. I didn't think it was going to be settled by 2.
No, but we'll take that. I nearly don't want to jump straight into the second half where the action happens without mentioning, and you've just said it there, the commitment and the performance by nearly everyone. Like, I think that's probably Johannes Yelikoko's one of his best performances as well. He ran. Dan Kelly, we've seen him, you know, have that sort of performance in him as well, where, you know, he harassed, and you know, that defense is glad to see the back from him, because every loose ball or pass, he was on it. You know, even at the end, when the ball's in the corner, you know, he was, you know, there were no one was giving up anything in that team tonight, and that's a hell of a performance. But I just thought, like you say, the intensity, but working as a group, like, everybody knew there was plenty of communication tonight. It just seemed to have the right mix of everything there tonight, and that's, you know, it's important to kind of mention.
Sorry, Chris. There is a player we haven't mentioned at all in this conversation at all at any stage. Is that's Greg Sloggett's coming back in for his 200th league appearance this evening. Like, Greg is a very important player for Dundalk in terms of his composure, in terms of you know, his breaking the ball up and moving things forward. He made a run at one stage, and he was able just to lay off the pass, and it nearly resulted in a goal. But like, Greg is kind of one of those players that was maybe a missing piece of our jigsaw. And when he came back this evening, you could see that he was pulling the strings. But even his commanding presence in the midfield, like Yeni Coco was very, very good this evening. But you can still see that, like, when you compare him to some of the Shamrock Rovers players, he's still quite slight.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of occasions during the course of the game where he was a little bit muscled out of the ball. But Dickie Kelly's the same kind of frame, but you can see now he's getting an awful lot stronger and holding the ball up. But once again, pace from Archie Davies, Daniel Kelly, Eli Coco. Shamrock Rovers didn't like that. And that's something that I think if
you're right.
League of Ireland players, League of Ireland teams are going to be looking at, how do we chip this lock, so to speak, or how do we unlock this lock of Shamrock Rovers or chip in the armour? It seems now that if you press them with pace and you're able to kind of hold a back line that's quite solid, which it was this evening with Louis Hennessy commanding the back line, you're in with a shot.
Yeah, and look, and that's it. Like I think everyone has kind of said, Kieran, that the Shamrock Rovers team, it's not as good as their points tally and where they are in the league would reflect. But just nobody could find that combination at times. We've seen it earlier in the year, but we're kind of wondering, is that down to, there was a flood of red cards, suspensions, bad injuries, kind of hit them at the start. And there was a, shock result in Cork and Drogheda did the same. But, that Shamrock Rovers side now has to go up to Weavers Park next Friday. Like that's not, it's going to be another pitch where people are going to be in their faces as well. Like it's amazing how, if other teams start looking at our performance tonight and say, well, actually, this is how we play against them. It could be interesting. It's into the second half, Kieran, and I suppose Stephen Bradley's trying to find a way to get into this game because they're not creating enough chances. He brings on Gaffney, and he does have that chance that just whizzes past the post very quickly. I was like, oh, I think that was a wake-up call we probably needed in that defense, because everything was played just in front of us. Suddenly there was a big target man in there and pushing hard. I think when that came in, as I said, I think it's a bit of a wake-up call. And then, it can't be any surprise that not that long after that, Skip made another substitute, and that's to get Wardy in. And I seen Wardy come in. I went, this is the game for him. We need someone now. We've got the gameplay, but now we need to do is start dictating our own little tempo. And the thing about Wardy is, he loves to get on the ball, but he also loves to draw a player out, create space for other players to run into. Well, we might as well just go straight into this now. Let's go for Ansley's goal. And that's exactly what ends up happening.
Yeah, but see, the thing about Wardy's very intelligent in the sense that he's able to, first of all, spot a pass. Like, he's able to really, but as you said, he draws players out, but he's that trickery and stuff like that. The players are naturally drawn towards him to try and snuff out the opportunity. And Wardy, when he's on his game, he's just able to be that magic man with the ebb and the flow. But like, when Wardy was at Bohemians, he was doing this. Like he just likes playing against Shamrock Rovers. He just has that kind of knack about him, and tonight was no different. And then, but like, he is really that kind of magical impact player that any team would love to have. And then we've got, the goal where Louis Hennessy just breaks from the back line. He spots that gap and continues his run. And everyone's kind of going, well, where is he going with this? And then all of a sudden, just unleashes this effort. And like, it's just, the place goes into raptures, and rightly so, because it was a very, very well taken strike. And it was well deserved. No one can doubt, and no one could ever turn around and say that this side didn't deserve to take the lead, because they did tonight. And I'm delighted for Louis in a way, because he's had a rough run of it, with the fact that he got sepsis earlier on in the year, and he, was a very, very serious injury. For him to come back and do that in a big game speaks volumes about his character, and it speaks volumes about him as a player.
Like if we talk about it though, like, so he picks up the ball, a loose ball inside his own half, just inside, just outside the center circle. He steps in, he takes command of that. he just clearly looks up and says, well, there's an ocean of space in there. Suddenly, just as the player comes towards him, he nips it to Wardy. And at least, like, the thing I liked about that is he didn't just stop. He didn't say, well, my job here is
continue the run.
Yeah, exactly. By doing that, he created, there's a massive gap in between that Wardy could play it back in. And if any player is going to get that ball back to you, it's Wardy. And that's the thing. Like, I just think, I love the fact that he just didn't stop. That he went, right, I've intercepted the ball, I passed it off, but my job still isn't done here. And he continues on. Suddenly he's into space. It's 2v1 with Dan Cleary. Dan Cleary doesn't know when to stick or twist. He's kind of backing off, thinking this ball's just going to be laid off because there's no way their centre half's going to run up and strike the ball. But what a strike! Like, it nestles in there. Like I said, for everything that's been happening with him this year, you wouldn't be happier for another player than it was for him tonight. And I just think, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's fantastic. And the thing is that it sets the tone of, like, I think one of the things that Dundalk has been famous for is that goals have been kind of coming from everywhere in the past number of years. And it's been kind of a trademark that, the goals have been well spread out. And I think our centre halves really have to be called up because they haven't really scored that many, no. But it's another dynamic.
Set pieces maybe, Kieran, not 40, 50-yard runs and putting in the top corners.
No, we're not asking for the 40, 50-yard runs, but what but like you're looking at, our set pieces, our corners and stuff like that. We used to have that kind of commanding presence from set pieces, particularly from corners and stuff like that. And that's something which, Dundalk need to really, like, it's still something that Dundalk need to be more threatening with. Yeah. And I just think, though, the fact that we got a goal from a centre half this evening, someone who absolutely deserved it, because of the year that he's had. But you know what? No one was expecting it. No one was expecting. Dan Cleary wasn't expecting it. None of us were expecting him to shoot and produce that goal. But it just lifted the crowd so much, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, and like you said, he lifted the crowd on a night where we were probably wondering where, like you mentioned earlier on, where the atmosphere could come in Oriel Park tonight. A goal like that just ignites the whole stadium, and it probably rocked. It definitely did rock Shamrock Rovers because, you think he played his big hand of bringing on Gaffney, and that's what he was looking for. But for 5 minutes later, so we win a free kick.
3 minutes between the two. 3 minutes between the two goals. Yeah.
So we win a free kick out, but what a ball in! Like you just mentioned, set pieces there, and Wardy goes and delivers one of those balls that we said it before. There's certain Pat Hooban trademark goals, and that's right up there with one, isn't it?
I've watched it back. I had my dad unfortunately couldn't make the game this evening, so he wanted the goals on highlight. The first thing I've noticed is that Pat Hooban was under pressure from two Shamrock Rovers players, including one who had the grip of his jersey. He was able to he pulled with him. He had to head it at a very tight angle because Poles did have it covered. And also he was moving kind of away from the curvature of the ball when it was coming in. The movement, the pressure from the defender, and to get it back, Leon Poles, that just typifies everything good about Patrick Hooban and about the goals that he scores.
Yep.
And, it's goal 145. It's just absolutely exceptional. And once again, he's come up in the big games. James Rogers said on his podcast this week that Pat Hooban's goals, like a lot of his goals were, I think over half of them were the first goal in a game or the first goal for Dundalk, which shows that he's not kind of scoring goals that ended games just to polish things off or anything like he's scoring important goals, and the majority of them have been important goals. And tonight was another one of those because 1-0 at that stage, it's anybody's game. They get an opportunity. It's 1-1 as a point apiece. But then he gets that second goal. They've got a huge mountain to climb because at that stage you're talking 12 minutes left in the game, And when you're chasing that and you've been pressed so high for the entire game, it's very, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But Pat Hoban does what Pat Hoban does, and I couldn't be happier for him, because I think I've mentioned on social media a couple of times, my mother grew up beside Joey Donnelly. Like, she was his neighbour. Like, so there's kind of that wee bit of a connection with that. Like, and for him to break the record has just been unbelievable. The fact that he's continuing to do so is just show that he's not finished yet. He's going to blitz it.
Yeah, and like, to be fair, like, Oriel Park are ups, but I felt that Shamrock Rovers were absolutely shell shocked. They were struggling to find a way back into the game. You know, he's bringing on Burke. He's trying everything to get himself back into it. But I really did feel what was left on the clock then, 13 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
By the time we had scored, I honestly thought that we had enough in this. I think there's only one real chance after that of note, and that's there is a save from Nathan Shepherd on, you know, in the second half, but it's a strong push away, edge of the box, balls dropping, and just hit at it early. That was really it though for Shepherd for tonight. An easy 20th clean sheet for him in his Dundalk career.
Absolutely, like, but you know, you look at his performance tonight compared to his performance on Monday night. Monday night, he really had to be called in on a couple of occasions to pull off these fantastic saves. You know, to deny Reeve even at the end from Thomas Lonergan and Jake Mulroney. He pulled off some fantastic. This evening, he had a different type of game because the way the defense was set up, that they were really kind of high pressing. Shamrock Rovers were kind of trying to, you know, really be on the edge of the last man. It didn't work for them on a couple of occasions because they were either pushed out to the right or they were offside. Aaron Green had just no luck this evening. On another night he could have ran riot, but tonight it just wasn't his night, thankfully for us. But like, you know, but in saying that, Dundalk managed the back four really well. You know, they were very calm and composed. They didn't panic, and everybody had a job to do, and it did work to perfection. But Nathan, when he had to be called into action, he wasn't found with cold feet and wasn't found wanting.
Yeah, a quick one, because this is something I noted during the game as well. Just Colin Mullen put in. He says, I hate to mention the ref on such a great night, but he managed to book 4 players. Like, how Richie Towell was not booked tonight, I'll never know. Because he was, you know, in amongst the best and the worst thing. He was kicking balls away. He was getting frustrated. He was yelling out. At one stage, I think it might have been for Dan Kelly's yellow card in the second half. He was given the yellow card, and then 2 minutes later, there's a free kick.
A very harsh tackle on Holman. Yeah.
Yeah, and McPack comes running over to rest saying, surely if you book Dano, you have to book this player, and still no yellow card. It was a bizarre situation for me.
It was right. How do I say this? I think it. Look, it's no. I think it's no. How would you say? No stranger to anybody that I do work for the FEI, so I do kind of have to be very careful about how would you say criticizing the officials because of just where I am.
I think all we're talking for here though is a level playing, like two tackles very
but
similar.
This is what I'm getting at. Like, I mean, Damien Duff did raise it earlier on in the year where the standards in performances of the teams have risen. The standards of the style of play and how the league is performing and attendances, and he maintains that the referees have to come to that level. I think in reality that still holds true. I think there needs to be a more consistent performances, that if you're going to show one card for one and one card for another, it has to be consistent on both sides. There was at one stage where Daniel Kelly was body checked by Daniel Cleary. I think it was in the first half, and Paul McLaughlin just waved it and said, no, not a hope. And I'm kind of going, well, no, Dan Cleary stopped deliberately to stop Daniel Kelly. And you're kind of one, and Roberto Lopez was told to calm down at one stage very early on in the half, the first half. There was just, you're right, there's 4 yellow cards for Dundalk. but there's only one for Shamrock Rovers. In reality, it wouldn't have shocked me if there was 4 to 5 yellow cards on either side, because tackles and the intensity of the game would have warranted that. Standards.
Well, it's four cards for each side, Kieran, I would say, or none at all. Like, if you're happy to let that go and let the intensity be there, absolutely. But then, you can't be seen to be cautioning one side and then similar tackles on the other. I think that's the thing. It's that lack of inconsistency that you just mentioned.
I completely agree. There needs to be a consistency in relation to that. If you're going to penalise one player on one team for one, you have to, if there is a similar, if not worse, tackle on the other side. Absolutely.
Yeah, as I say, look, we don't want to go through it on a night of a great result. It'd be foolish.
I'm sorry for sitting on the fence, lads, but you understand my position. So
no, that's understandable. Kieran, let's look at a bigger picture here before we get in on it all. So, if we take, I suppose, most of the second half performance against Pats, this performance here, we've seen bits and pieces at times, possibly in I'm thinking in the latter stages in Drogheda as well. All of a sudden, you start putting these bits together that we've had on this recent unbeaten run that we're on. There's a lot of good football to pick there.
Yeah, and
that surely is the blueprint going forward. Like, there's people coming in and saying, back three is like just Patsy back in there. Leahy looks far better in a back three than a left full. 3-4-2-1 is a better way going forward. So is it something that, I suppose, it's something that Skip is kind of saying, maybe this is the way he wanted to play probably for most of the season, but lack of personnel, injuries and everything else, he's been unable to do this. And you still think, he was missing Elliott there tonight, who, he's really championed over the past few weeks and has been playing really well. So it's still not exactly what he wants, but would you say there's definitely a better level of performance from this Dundalk team over the past while? And is it the results or growing confidence? And maybe that's it. What do you see as?
As my dad once said, winning is a habit and losing is a filthy habit. I think that in reality, when we look at it, momentum builds with confidence with wins. And we just got, but the other thing is we just got that little bit of luck. And there's been a couple of games where, you're looking at the Cork performance, you're looking at the Drogheda game in Oriel Park, you're looking at the 2 games in Weavers Park this season. And then there's other games where we just couldn't get a momentum, we couldn't get a run going, and then unfortunately we lost. I think in reality what's happened here is that Padge and Skip have finally settled on something that they feel is something that's going to work with the players that he has at his disposal right now. The players are comfortable with it. The players are confident with it. And you can see that that's where this is going. We've got a game against Bohemians now next week. That's another game which could be huge. It's going to further give us momentum. And then we go into Europe. Look, I'm going to say this, the first game against Bohemians at the beginning of the season, we were absolutely out-muscled in every department. We just looked so tepid. If we match what we did this evening, Bohemians and Dundalk is going to be a completely different game in Dalymount Park on Friday. I think finally what's happened is that the players and the management are starting to gel on the same page here, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labour.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think it's, like I say, the new players probably buying into Skip and the system and what he wants from them. And like I say, probably a couple of results grows their confidence in their ability in this league that's new to them. And plus the players around them. And you're probably looking, and you mentioned already, like the likes of Robbie McCourt, actually getting a run of games has probably benefited him a lot more. Conor Malley, the same thing. You were looking at, a better performance. But the person who really, I think, has excelled the most is Archie Davis, because the more games he's played, it's a little like, I know it's a very similar position, but Macari, we seen him get better and better and better. In that, the more he played, the more confidence grew in him. And I think we're starting to see that in Archie Davis is similar. He understands that role a lot better now and is really blossoming in that position. And I think you're right. I think that's it. And look, don't get me wrong. If you want to start improving and come together a team, just as Europe's around the corner, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But like, I mean, I think also what the big problem is that we've been blessed with pacey right backs for so long. We had Sean Gannon, Lou McCarry, and then, you know, unfortunately Archie was always going to be compared
Yeah.
to, you know, to that. And that was kind of unfortunate because we didn't exactly give him an awful lot of time to get settled in. But I think if anything, the international break and the mid-season break probably came at the right time. You know, there was a couple of bodies that were able to come back after it. They were rested up, and they, you know, there was little niggling injuries. But I think Archie has finally settled into a system which really suits him and suits him as a player and suits the team as well. And because of that, you're now seeing the blossom of it. And just as you're about to come into Europe, that this team has started to click. Now, I don't know anything about Bruno's Magpies. I know nothing about them, but it just seems that we're just clicking just at the right time.
Yeah. Look, I think we'll have a quick little chat about Europe matters shortly after, but we better start doing some housekeeping first, Kieran. It's that time tonight. We will go through man of the match. So bear with me, everybody, because actually there's a flood. And I always say it's the sign of a good performance, Kieran, when our man of the match competition comes in quite varied. So like there's, let's say Davis came in with a fair bit at the start. Dan Kelly's got a good few mentions here. Louis Ainsley's got some mentions. Conor Malley with some mentions there as well. Pat Hubin. So actually we're probably spread across maybe 4 or 5 players here. I will say there's probably 2 or 3 that are right out the front. Sorry, go on ahead.
I said that speaks volumes of the performance of the team when you have such a 5 or 6 players being mentioned. That speaks volumes of the side in general.
Yeah. For yourself, who stood out for you?
For me, it was Archie Davies. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I thought he worked tirelessly during the course of the game. I thought his deliveries at time was excellent. It caused an awful lot of problems. He was commanding then that right wing. He linked up very well with Daniel Kelly and other players, and I think that in itself is something which going forward is going to be very, very important for this side. An honourable mention does go to Louis Ainsley. I think he's just carried in that performance that he had for Gibraltar into the Dundalk side. That's been so important for us. But I do see that people have been mentioning Dan Kelly. I think he did an awful lot of work off the ball that probably went unnoticed.
Yeah, I think it's probably Dan's best performance too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's been criticism of Daniel Kelly. I think a lot of people would maintain that he's blown hot and cold. Look, I know Dan, and you know, as a person, and he's a great lad. I think he would probably be most critical of his performances himself. But I think if he's given a specific role to do, I'll tell you exactly what I thought of him this evening. I always remember Alex Ferguson speaking about in a Champions League final. He says one of his biggest regrets was not bringing on Ji-Sung Park, but for his tireless energy and drive forward. Daniel Kelly had that about him tonight, and I think that's something which I think Dundalk fans will really, really appreciate from him, is that it just his pace and, you know, everything. And from a family perspective, I know I'm getting off a bit off topic, but he's had a great week this week because his cousin's going to the World Cup. So, you know, that's a big thing for him. So, look, he's had a good week, and tonight he's had a good performance.
Yeah.
But it is Archie for me.
Yeah, you know, it's like I say, it's a testament of a good performance when we, like I mentioned, we do have so many year before, because I think from Ainsley's point of view, I think he's grown in stature in this team. That goal's going to do his confidence a world of good. You could see him. He was probably one of Gibraltar's best players as well in the Aviva. He's really brought that form back into him. You know, even Skip in his post-match interview said he wasn't surprised that he scored a goal like that, because, you know, he could have had a crack against Ireland, but he decided not. You know, I'm glad he waited till now. Don't get me wrong, but you know, it's brilliant to have that in his locker. I think Dan Kelly is similar again, just getting better and better the more games he plays. We know Dan loves to play on that last defender and hassle and harry, and he loves under space for him to run in behind, or a loose ball that he can chase down. And I think if, you know, we've been talking the past wee while about Patrick Hubin, the older he gets, the deeper he's coming, and the more he's being involved, not just at the end of important plays and goals. He can be part of the start, and having players like Dan Kelly, who's got pace and running, and it's no surprise probably that Ryan O'Kane's playing his best football as well over the past year, because Pat's back in the team as well and injury free. So I do think that, and Conor Malley, I actually don't think there's any surprise that he's playing his better football when Greg Sloggett's there, and Greg is fully fit, because a fully fit Greg Sloggett allows Conor Malley then to be more expansive in the game and show what he can do. So I think there's a lot there, but I'm going to go with you on this as well, which makes my life easier as well, that we agree. So I'm not like a lottery trying to pick up like Galley's wheel here. I think Archie Davis, another solid performance, and he's had solid performance after solid performance and and unfortunately he's come up against, Hubin, who's been getting records and breaking records, and he's probably been overlooked for the man match. So even just probably for his last run alone, it'll be good just to really be able to call him out and for him to win the competition tonight as well. I guess it's probably 50-50. I'm not even going to lie to you, between and Dickie and Archie on tonight as well. So that's also good. But like I said, a good plethora across as well of people mentioned. For the interest of the competition, I think tonight we'll look plenty of comments in tonight as well, which is great as well for it. The competition, I think we'll go look. One of our earlier ones today is Andrea McQuillan. What a performance, top to bottom. Everyone worked hard tonight, each other, and a joy of frustrating the Rovers. Davis, man of the match, another top class performance, and I think that's the reason I want to give it to him. Is it's another one, and it's just come up against another reason to give it to somebody else, because Shep had big saves or Pat had big goals or something, and it's just it's great just to be able to call it out and say, Archie, this is probably one of your best. Flano comes in with at the end. That doesn't count now, Flano. You're too late with that one.
Sorry,
yeah. Look, as I say, Keane, we'll get talking to Europe in 1 second. I suppose the other news coming out of the club this week, Ryan Tulloch, his time is done at the club now as well. He'll be going back to West Brom. Looking back on the time he had here, I suppose he's made more appearances for Dundalk than he had with any of his other times at any other clubs. That's something he can take back. Anyway, Flano, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't. It'd ruin your regime, Flano.
I would, but anyway, he would.
How would you rate Tulloch's time at the club?
I think it was similar to that of Stephen Bradley, where he kind of blew out of the traps and he was extremely impressive in his opening stages. I'm led to believe that those performances in his opening time at the Dog did pique interest from clubs over in England. Listen, he's a young player. He's there's no doubt you can see the quality in him, I think. However, it's just that line of consistency that he needs to get into his performances, and that will come in time with experience. Look, he can go back now and say that he's half a full season of professional men's football, and I've been very, I'm not going to say critical, but I've been very kind of, how would you say, I'm not exactly impressed with the football system over in England, where there's, and it's been described to me that this under 23s football, it's very much non-competitive. It's palsy. It's just, they're playing at a particular level, and it's, there's not much edge to it, where Rayan will be going back now knowing what it's like to be, hassled and kicked and, tackled hard and things like that, where there's no kind of concern over injuries or anything like that. He'll be the better for it, and he'll bring that experience back to wherever he's going next. And whether it's at West Brom or whether it's at another loan deal, that remains to be seen. I think the red card was slightly unfortunate last week. I didn't think the second yellow was warranted. That's just me. But all in all, I think he can go back now. He said that he put in some good performances for Dundalk, and Dundalk fans would be happy for him. Look, he rescued a point up in Shelburne. It looked like we were going to be there all night, and we huffed and we puffed, and finally we blew the house down. But that shows, those kind of glimpses of his performances show that the quality is there, and hopefully he can bring that into the next stage of his career. Stephen says that he's not sure whether or not that there'll be a situation in which he's going to be able to bring players in. Hopefully there will be, because we've lost both Waziri Williams and Rayhan Tulloch in the past 10 days or so. So that's 2 players down that we really need to get we need to get bodies on board. I'm just reading John there, he is a frustrating player. There's no two ways about it, John. But as I did say, he did drift in and out of games, and because of that, is something that he's going to have to improve on going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. If you look at John's comment there previously and Ken's here, like, they're talking about he has ability.
Yeah,
but and then you think, what, the lad's only 22 as well. He's still a young man, and we know players are 22 and they've got bags of football underneath them. This is his first club probably where he's played. Considered definitely in a first team environment. For nearly every match that he's an opportunity to be out there. Scored 5 goals as well. Like, that's good for him to kind of go back on that as well. You probably know where I'm going with this next. Then is, I suppose, so with Rayhan gone from the team, Skip mentioned he doesn't know if he's going to be able to bring in somebody. We don't worry, that seems to be unclear right now, which is obviously it's a sense of frustration for the fans, because where do we go? We're looking at a European campaign. I mentioned it last week. I wonder, does the length that we stay in Europe dictate whether we can bring in a player, or maybe extend contract? And by that I mean obviously Nathan Shepherd, and maybe this is the reason why the club haven't come forward. If we get through a round or two, does that change things for us? But at the same time, Kieran, I would say we probably need the personnel to go and get through these rounds. So it's you damn you do, damn you don't.
It's very much a catch-22, because it's very well documented at this stage that player recruitment is something that is a very glaring aspect of the club at the moment. People are wondering whether or not we are going to be bringing players in, and I think a lot of this does have to be predicated on the fact that we have 2 rounds in Europe where we know that we're facing a team from Gibraltar, an unknown quantity. We don't know what they're facing. And then the possibility of going either over to Wales or Iceland, depending on the result of that game. It's not necessarily the opposition at the moment. There is a financial aspect. The reason why the Europa Conference League has been created is that, from a financial point of view and from a progression point of view, it's designed for clubs like Dundalk, and it's designed for clubs like Shamrock Rovers and so on. But then when you see the qualification rounds and sometimes the teams that are coming in at the second and third round, you're kind of looking at them going, sorry, I was about to curse there, better not. But you're kind of looking at them going, first of all, they should be automatically qualifying for the group stage, and then, or they should be qualifying for the qualifications rounds of the Europa League. But that's just the way the system has been built. But I think if Dundalk are going to really look to strengthen, there's a couple of things that need to happen. The first of all is that we need to think, we need to get into that third round, because that's where the big financial money is like progression. Obviously, a win, you get a bonus. Progression's a bonus. It's all money, unfortunately, at this stage. And we know that there has been, the financial records were released last year. There was a recording of a loss. In reality, Europe is now going to hopefully close that gap of that loss, but there's still that glaring aspect that the squad is very thin, and if we were to be hit with a serious kind of injury crisis like we were hit either earlier on this year or next year, or later on in the year, we could be in big trouble. And I think at this moment in time, whether we need to go into the loan market or the free agent market, we definitely do need to have bodies on board. There's still the question. I know that it's kind of gone cold a little bit. There's still that question over whether Darrell Horgan will have another year in England or whether he'd be settling here in Ireland. That remains to be seen. But, you'd love to bring him in. Obviously, you would. But that comes down to finances. It comes down to a deal that's offered on the table. Same goes for Nathan Shepherd. I know that his agent has spoken recently on the Town End podcast in relation to a contract offer or lack thereof. So I think it's all based on what happens in the next 2 months and how we perform over the next 2 months. And if it's a case that we get through a couple of rounds in Europe, which we're well capable of doing, it has that kind of, I don't know what it is. I just think we have this feeling that we might be going on a magical mystery tour of Europe once again. And
you're hoping.
If that is the case, if that is the case, then I'm all for it. The credit union won't be, but I'm all for it. But I shouldn't say that out loud too much. But in all seriousness, like, if it's a case that we progress through a couple of rounds in Europe, things start to look, more rosy in the garden. I just see that that John's put in a thing there about Daryl's wage demands.
Yeah.
But
this is the problem with levels in England, though, isn't it?
That we're in. We're not, but are we going to sacrifice the possibility of having 3 players to sacrifice for one? I don't think we should. John's
coming up with alternative places to get loans for your European spell. Thanks for that, Flato. I suppose the other frustration part comes from the fans. We haven't heard that much from the owners at all. We're unsure, and even Skip at times sounds a little unsure of whether he's going to be able to or not. For me, that would probably suggest it's a better chance that we'll probably go to the loan market, as you can, only take in part of their wages and come to some agreement with clubs. And you think with Stat Sports being so well established in the UK as well, with a number of big clubs, that's probably the most likely market, would you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, just touching on the first point that you've made there, like, I mean, it's been brought up on other podcasts and other discussions that a fan survey was released at the end of last year. Fans were asked to complete the form. We were then told that the owners were to come out to speak about about the results of that said fans form. There hasn't been any communication in relation to that, and I understand that running a football club is a major business. I understand that Stat Sports have obligations elsewhere. I completely understand that, but the only conversation, the only kind of communication we have received from the chairman, Sean Connor, during the course of this year was when the discussions and when the initial stages of a partnership takeover, whatever way you want to talk about it, with Hull City kind of came into light. That obviously has not predicated. It's now, they've decided to invest in Shelburne. That's all that's by the by. But we haven't had a discussion, and the owners haven't had a discussion about what exactly their plans are for the club overall. And I'm not talking about just the first team. I'm talking about the overall structure of the club as a whole and how they're going to move forward. And I think if our fans are absolutely fantastic, they'll back the club 110%. But I think now we need to see a bit of a reflection from the support from the owners a little bit. I think we need to see, if I'm quite honest with you, this is probably the best time to come out. We're about to hit into this buzz of Europe. Everybody involved in Dundalk Football Club loves this time of year. It would be a great time to come out and say, if we progress in Europe, we might start to investigate the following projects in terms of infrastructure, in terms of fan engagement, in terms of community engagement, whatever it may be. Any sort of communication from the owners at this stage would be an added bonus to what we're looking at. And if they're able to turn around and say, we are investigating current options in the transfer market for loan deals, it would appease an awful lot of fans at the moment. Yeah. And it would lay a lot of fears, because the feeling that I'm getting, this is my personal opinion, is that we're kind of not even moving forward. We're kind of just standing still, and other clubs just look like they're progressing. There's talk of an investment group looking to go into Drogheda United. Finn Harps have plans for a stadium. Tala is almost complete. Shelburne are after getting a new ownership partnership agreement. Bohemians are currently tearing down part of their stadium for a rebuild. what's coming from us at the moment and what will
Yeah.
come from us. Even if we turn around and say we are currently looking into plans or we're currently exploring avenues, just give us something to look forward to. I think we'd be very happy.
Yeah, and I think that's it exactly. I think as fans, we just want something. We need a goal to be aiming for. And I think when you say that it feels a little bit stagnated, maybe at the moment, I think that's the thing. If we knew where we were going, and you know, probably more than a new Mullins van, Flano, you know, I think we need the grand plan. You know, I know Martin Connolly was up with as part of the I think it was the Labour Party's announcement this week to be rolling in behind and seeking finances for football in Ireland. You know, I get where he's coming from. He stated, you know, it's very hard for us to, you know, the plastic pitch needs to get done, but we've 7 teams. Like, where do 7 teams play out of, and how do we make that work? But these are exactly where, and you're talking about, you know, fan engagement and things like that, and this all feeds into it, and community engagement. This all has to be, if we can all move as a community at Dundalk Football Club, we can find ways around this. We can find, you know, potential avenues, and we're bringing more people in who maybe have potential better influence around, but we just don't have, and that's my frustrating as well. We just don't have a goal to be reaching. We all say we'd love to see Oriel Park, you know, refurbished, but where's our plans for a refurbished Oriel Park? Where's our plans to try to invest in another pitch so we can start moving some of these 7 teams away? I think that's the real kicker part. Like I say, you're looking at Dalymount Park being taken down, and they've got these grand plans for a lovely stadium and everything. And you're looking at a fourth stand in Tala and things like that. And like I say, you mentioned the Donegal Community Stadium for Finn Harps as well. And I just wish we had something to aim for, even if it's a smaller project. Like when Bohemians announced the mono stand, we're like saying that's the perfect model.
Yeah,
for the
I said
Memorial Park.
The mono stand is an ideal project that could have been put behind the town end goals.
Yeah,
you know, that would have been the perfect. Could you imagine a safe standing? I love the shed. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. But could you imagine a situation in which we had our fans behind the goal? It would just be an incredible view. From a viewpoint, it would just look better. But you look at some of the grounds when they're on TV, aesthetically it doesn't look good. Like League of Ireland grounds don't look good. And I know that the FEI have come out and said, like, and I'm going to applaud them. I know they don't get a lot of credit, but for the first time, they've come out with an actual plan of how they're going to look for public financing in order. And they have specifically said that League of Ireland grounds do need an infrastructural improvement. And I think probably what they have recognised is that there could be a situation, and Lord forbid that this would happen, but is it going to turn around that there's going to be an incident where somebody is going to get very badly hurt, or worse still, before, once again, as I was speaking earlier on, a proactive versus a reactive thing. I think they now realise that stadium in Ireland, stadia in Ireland, when it comes to football, is not up to standard. Yeah, it just simply isn't. There's a lot of grounds that are fantastic, but they're just dilapidated and really need an influx of money. The pitch is a huge issue. I won't mention names, but there were 2 people sitting behind me. Both of them are professional footballers, and both of them were extremely.
Are they free agents?
Pardon?
Are they free agents?
No, I'm not going to name who they are, because if I give away where one of them is, it will only cause me an awful lot of trouble. But the fact is that both of them were criticising the pitch, as in the condition of the pitch and so on. But I get where Martin's saying that, like, we have a massive influx of teams. Does this require that we have a situation in which we have a partnership with 1 to 2 of the schoolboys league teams? No, wasn't Gavin. Where we have a link up with 2 of the local schoolboys leagues, where the teams go and play there. maybe that's something that we might need to look into. Like that builds a community partnership. You can go down and watch the Dundalk under-17s and under-19s playing in Bellevue Park and stuff like that. It's just something to look into. But you're right. They're just, unfortunately, at this moment in time, there's the lack of communication is very frustrating for everybody involved. Look, at the end of the day, I know that I do reporting and stuff like that, but I'm a Dundalk fan at the end of the day, and Oriel Park has not changed apart from the pitch since I arrived there in 1999. Like, nothing else in the ground has changed in reality, apart from obviously the youth development centre. Nothing else has changed. But then again, if I was to turn around and say something, maybe it's something that supporters need to look into. Like, are we going to just, I think, we've got the 1903, we've got a very positive person in Orla. Could we look at going to Oriel Park and saying, look, if you want to design and build something, what can we do to help fundraise, even if it's just a deposit? How who do we need to contact in relation to funding from county councillors? I understand that like county council, funding could be a little bit tight at the moment, but there has to be some sort of engagement going forward. And I think that that's something that if Dundalk were to work with the 1903 or with, a core set of supporters who have particular skill sets, you never know what could happen.
Yeah, and that's it. I 100% agree. Yeah, that's what we need to be, and that's where we need to get to. And it's just about, like you say, moving on as a club. And these sort of results, that sort of performance deserves a better backdrop. Like, all I'm thinking is, both goals tonight. If there's fans behind the goal, how better does that look? If the pitch is fantastic, how great does that look? It's all about optics from people outside the league, and that brings new people to come and go to Oriel Park.
Just a small thing, like, I know this is going to come across as one very about facilities, but one of the biggest criticisms that I have heard from female supporters is the lack of toilet facilities in Oriel.
Yeah.
And that's a deterrent for female supporters going to the game. And I know you've spoken about it before with Sophie, that you had an issue with Sophie before. Like, that's something that's very easily fixed and could be brought forward. And, it's showing that you're caring about, your female support base. And if you were just to get that little bit, that doesn't take an awful lot, but it's a small step in which you're sitting there and saying that we're engaging with, we've listened to what you've said. This is what we're going to do as a first part. Like, it's a very small thing, but it could be a very important thing.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think we could probably be blue in the face
here all night.
Yeah, definitely, and it's something we've done. But I just think it's important we bring this up again and again. I think we want improvement on the playing side, obviously, of course, but there has to be a bigger thing in this as well of where we're going as a football club. And I think that's really what we're calling for here, is just a bit of a plan, a bit of a future goal for us. Speaking of future goals, we can actually look at the current goal of where we stand in the league table, Kieran. Let's have a quick look at that. Obviously, I think you mentioned it already, just a couple of results kind of have gone for us tonight. So obviously Shamrock Rovers still top of the league. Pats move into second on 42 after a big win tonight. Derry City in third behind that on 40 points. We're only a point behind Derry on 39 points in fourth. And I suppose we now are starting to open up a little gap. I know there's games in hand to be played by Bows, but we think about how if we could sign off Friday with some sort of a result there, I think that could consolidate our position into that fourth place going into our European campaign. Below a win for Sligo tonight, which is good for them, I suppose, and keeps it interesting and tight. Below us, Drogheda and Cork, I think, was a draw tonight, 1-1. Keeps them two in the mix and make it interesting for that playoff spot. No one wants to be in that, but it's going to make it interesting. Kieran, just your thoughts on that. also looking at the form there beside us, we're actually the most
I'm
formed
just
team in the
looking at
league.
it, we're the informed side in the league at the moment with 4 wins and a draw. Shamrock Rovers have 3 wins, a draw and a loss. And you know, St. Patrick's Athletic have gotten a couple of very good results, but I think Derry are, you know, we're now in the hunt for that 3rd place, and dare I say, Derry thought, you know, I'm not saying Derry thought, but a lot of talk at the beginning of the season was that this was going to be their year. And it just goes to show you how, if you have to remain consistent, you have to remain, you know, how would you say, you have to get that little bit of luck. And I think Rory Higgins just hasn't gotten that little bit of luck, and neither have Derry City. And it's going to be very, very tough. But look how exciting it is that there's only really 7 points between 4th and 1st. Like, John, you're making me laugh. Stop. But in reality, like, look how tight the top 4 positions are in this league.
Yeah.
And isn't that better than just having a runaway 1st and everyone else just playing catch up? Like, this is anybody's league at the moment. We still have so much football left to play. It's exciting for everybody, and I think it's the team that gets the most consistent run near the end of the season will end up in the top 3. And judging by the way, if Dundalk get their formation and their plans right, plus some of their players, if not new ones, you never know. We could be sitting pretty in part of the top 3. And the thing is that with the way that the league has gone this year, there's going to be an extremely disappointed side come the end of the year.
Yeah, that's it. There's only so many you can fit in so many positions, isn't it? I think that's it. Look, Kieran, I think we'll end up going way off on a topic. A couple of people coming in, Flano, just you know, basically boils down to people wanting to invest in Oriel Park, and then there's obviously the problem with the ownership of the ground, and Pingu just, you know, popping back in saying, look, this is something we mention on the podcast all the time, and it has to be everybody associated with Dundalk Football, board, fan, everybody needs to play their part in trying to improve Oriel Park, and I you know, I fully agree with that. Kieran, we've managed to go in another direction after a fantastic win tonight, but look, it's all these conversations I think they are important. And thanks to everybody for commenting in tonight, especially for our man of the match competition, and to Tony's Pizzeria for their continued support. So Andrea has a 15-inch pizza from Tony's Pizzeria on us this week. Thanks to PlayerFit for this year's shirt, and keep an eye on Tony's Pizzeria as they're giving away 1 or 2 shirts over the next wee while. So keep an eye on their social channels as well. And as always, thanks to Donald Green and to Dundalk Village for their overall sponsorship of the podcast as well. We thanks Donald for that as normal. Kieran, thank you for jumping in tonight. As always good to chat to you. Always good to go way off topic in an important 2-0 win. and talk about yours. But I just think, look, there's just been a lot of chatter all over about players, about investment, about improvement, and it's just important that we do spend on a night like this when everyone's, you know, engaged tonight for the result. It's important to bring up these issues. I think it's just important as a club, like I say, that we're always moving forward. And that's it for this week. We'll be back next week after the Bows match again. Could be some familiar faces here again for next week. And until then, come on to town.